Good evening and welcome to the Monday, February 14th Muscatine School Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, can you please take roll and help us determine the quorum, please?
Sure. Director Connor?
Here.
Cooney?
Here.
DeVete?
Here.
LaRue?
Here.
Morgan?
Here.
Phillips?
Here.
Short?
Here.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. Our next item is the Pledge of the Allegiance. Tonight, Muscatine High School wrestling team will lead us in the pledge. Please stand. Thank you, Muscatine High School wrestling team. With that, I would like to welcome our visitors and media representatives. So we'll start. We have two public hearings tonight, and we'll start with the first one for the proposed plans, specification, proposed form of contracts, and the estimated cost of said improvements for the Hvac 2 improvements, Muscatine High School Student Center renovation, Hvac 1 improvement projects. We would like to have a motion to proceed with the public hearing.
I'll make the motion to proceed with the hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, can we go with the roll call vote, please?
Director Connor?
Yes. Thanks, Mike. Aye.
Director Cooney?
Here.
Director DeVete?
Aye.
Director LaRue?
Yes.
Director Morgan?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
And Director Short?
Aye.
Thank you. We have a couple items under that since we opened this public hearing. One can be a discussion of all of us around the table, but I just want to remind everybody that this discussion can happen also later on before voting on any of these items. But also we can have oral and written comments received. And Madam Secretary, did you receive any written comments on this? None? Anybody would like to talk about this particular item? Any discussion around the table here? Okay, if no discussion, no oral or written comments, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move. Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, can we have roll call votes, please?
Director Connor?
Aye.
Director Cooney?
Aye.
Director DeVete?
Aye.
Director LaRue?
Aye.
Director Morgan?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
Director Short?
Aye.
Thank you. We move into the second public hearing. Public hearing for the proposed 2022-23 school calendar. Same thing, I would like to entertain a motion to open the public hearing, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
Director Connor?
Aye.
Director Cooney?
Aye.
Director DeVete?
Aye.
Director LaRue?
Aye.
Director Morgan?
Aye.
Director Phillips?
Aye.
And Director Short?
Aye.
Thank you. And same thing, we have two items under that is discussion around the table. And also, did we receive any written comments regarding this issue? Any oral comments?
You can speak if you want to.
Please, if you speak, identify yourself and your address for the record, and please share your information with us.
Tammy Holtquist, 2922 Patrick Lane. I only have one question. I was just curious as to why Good Friday will not be off that year.
And I can certainly speak to that. In putting that calendar together and working with our teachers and our staff, the request was made for Easter Monday to be a part of that. And so we made that adjustment. In the past, it has been Good Friday. And so that's the recommendation that we went with based on the conversation with our teachers.
I'm just going to ask, is this where we have discussion too based on prior discussion? Like we would ask any questions that we had about or follow-up that happens now, or is it just about?
You can ask about the calendar now, but we're going to get, when you vote on
Okay.
it later, we're going to talk about it again there too. So
There are
either
too
way.
many opportunities for me to ask questions, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's as I said, like both public hearing items going to be an action item later on, and we can have plenty of discussion about it. But also, if you would like to ask any question now while we have the hearing, it's up to you. So, okay. Any other discussion? Any other oral comments here? Thank you for sharing this information with us. And with that, if there is no other discussion, I would like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing, please.
So move.
Second.
Okay, Madam Secretary, can we have roll call, please?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Well, the next item on our agenda is student board member updates, and I see that we don't have any students tonight with us. So with that, we move into citizen speaks. If anyone in the audience wants to address the board, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes per Iowa code. The board is not able to respond to citizens during citizen speaks. Yeah.
You say I gotta get my address too? Or just my name?
It's usually we like to do that. I mean,
Matt
just to
Miller,
follow the
1778
procedure.
North
Yeah.
Isaac.
Thank you, Matt.
First off, I want to thank the board and the superintendent for setting time aside prior to this board meeting and the parents that could show up. I realize time's difficult and not everyone can make it due to different constraints. Many of this community feel like this is an opportunity to have open dialogue to where both sides can be heard. And while we may not agree on all outcomes, at least it appears to not fall on deaf ears. As community members continue to reach out to me for support, I still encourage you to reach out to the administration of your individual schools and drive that positive change and forward progress. Tonight, I want to address the subject of policies and accountability of our administration and school board members that need to be followed. However, due to time constraints, I cannot address all those issues or the passivity that is with the MCSD administration. Unfortunately, there is a lot of finger pointing within the same building, which brings concerns when leaders in our junior high and high school will not assume the responsibility for our students while in the care of the schools. I am not saying this falls on the schools, but when in the buildings, it is the administration's responsibility to lead and not cower down to fear or follow the lead of other MAC schools or take the less effective route for ease. It was stated by an AP that our high school does not have open campus, and this is not something we want, which many of the community do agree with. Yet students daily are leaving the campus and bringing their coffees in during the middle of the day or food, and if that doesn't work, then students are ordering DoorDash and just have it delivered to the school. There's also concern that the doors are propped open with towels or left unlocked so students can enter the building throughout the day, or the gate on Bonnie Drive is open all day, which makes campus even more enticing as it gives an easy exit or entrance back into the school that is not set up for open campus. If you are going to set policies, then hold true to these. And of those policies, If they need reviewed, then stop being passive and make the changes. I would like to finish off with a verse from the Bible in Luke 10:2. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. In this situation, our students are the harvest, and the workers are the parents, the administration, and along with teachers and staff. Please do not continue to be passive or silent, but grow and water this generation and future generations to be strong and a hearty harvest. This community and others need to stand strongly against those that are not for the better benefit of our students and our community. I thank you for your time, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Matt. Anybody else would like to address the board? Okay, thank you. Okay, moving forward, we move into board targets and goals report. We have 3 items under that, and item 1 or item A, students will graduate prepared for post-secondary options. Item B, Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably. And under that, we have the financial audit summary. And item C, students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. So I'll turn to Mr. Christopher, and
I'm going to turn over to
Sure, I can introduce
Anderson
Mia.
to talk
So,
about
tonight, we're going to have a presentation from our auditor. Our audit report was recently released. The audit committee met a couple weeks ago and are recommending the audit to be approved tonight. So our auditor's here just to give a brief summary from our audit committee meeting. So, thank you, Mia.
Thank you. So it is a pleasure to be here tonight to talk to you about the year-end audit from June 30, 2021. And as Tom mentioned, we did have a more detailed vetting session with the audit committee and finance committee earlier. So I do have summary comments tonight. The first thing I'd like to point out is there are 3 deliverables with the audit. There's the financial report, the traditional bound document you'd expect. And then there are 2 letters, a board communication letter and a 1-page, what we call the control deficiency letter. The larger letter is, I will admit, a bit boilerplate because it's required communications to the board and goes through maybe the summarizes of the fact that we perform the audits. There are estimates in the audit process. We make you aware of those, and we make you aware in this case that there were no disagreements or issues as we were performing our audit. Also attached to this larger letter is management's representations to us that you're required to be provided by your audit team. We do complete 3 audits, the financial statement audit, the government auditing standards audit, and the federal single audit, and I will go through those results. The audit does contain significant estimates. The 3 estimates for the school district are the depreciation of your capital assets, and I just put the note references in case you wanted to dig into that detail within the document. Other post-employment benefit is the benefit that all government employees in the state of Iowa have, which is the option to stay on an organization's medical plan after retirement into the age of 65. And then the net pension liability is also a significant estimate. That is the Iowa Public Employee Retirement System liability. Those have not changed from the prior year, so those will continue to be the significant estimates for Iowa school districts. In terms of audit results, in terms of the financial audit, you'll see that you have an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion, the highest level of an opinion you can receive. For the government auditing standards audit, this is an audit that looks at internal controls as well as compliance with laws and regulations. There were no findings over internal controls or no findings over compliance. In the report, the state auditor of Iowa has specific tests they require us to report on, and you'll see that regulatory section in part 4 of the report. Again, nothing rose to a significant issue. And then the Office of Management and Budget Single Audit is the audit of your federal programs. Any organization that expends $750,000 or more in 1 year on federal programs is required to undergo this audit. The main programs for the district this year were the ESSER and GEAR federal funding, and also the Title I program. There were, again, no findings to report as a result of that testing and no compliance findings. I did want to mention, especially with ESSER and GEAR being brand new, that will, I'm sure, need to be tested again since it's new to the federal government and new to all districts. There was approximately $1.3 million expended in fiscal year 21 on that program, so it had a significant impact to the district. And for Title I, the expenditures were $1.1 million, which is in line with what expenditures for that program have been. The other main program of the district is the child nutrition program, but that one was tested last year, and these Title I and nutrition have a rotating testing schedule. And last, we did issue that one-page letter. We call it the control deficiency letter. It used to be called the management advice letter. It's not findings, it's observations or suggestions. We only had one comment. It pertained to change orders and formalizing the approval process when there is a significant change order, that exceeds the bidding process. And so we just have a recommendation to review the current process over that. That's everything, unless you had any questions. It's easy to present when there isn't any findings, so.
First of all, thank you, Auditor, for this report, and I'm sure we all look into that report, and I don't know if any question for the auditors at this point. Anybody?
All right, I'd just like to thank Mia too, and Bonsack and Frommelt. It was another odd year, I guess, with COVID and doing things remotely and such. And just a shout out to the finance department too for preparing. It's always a little bit of high anxiety when auditors come around, just making sure we have all of our ducks in a row. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah. And indeed, Tom, thank you to you also and your team and your department for working with the auditor and having everything ready always. So thank you. With that, we move to next item, the superintendent updates. And under that, we have COVID updates and staff overload pay.
So just a couple of things to update you on quickly. First of all, from a COVID standpoint, as of this morning, we have 3 active cases across the district. That's staff and students, so that's significantly down from our high point of 1. It'll grow through the week. That's kind of where we're at now. But again, at one point, we were at over 100. So that number has changed significantly. And I would say from a staff attendance and a student attendance standpoint, we're back to where we were kind of pre-Thanksgiving. We're at some really low levels for us. So we're back there to about 8% of our absences related to COVID for students, and our staff attendance at 90%. So we haven't seen that for several months. So it's good to see that, and certainly in the buildings, I think they're feeling that as more staff are in the building every day and fewer shortages. So that's a positive. And along those lines, our staff has done a great job. They've continued to kind of step to the plate and be flexible and fill in as we have people gone on a daily and weekly basis. And so as we look at how we compensate them for that additional work, you'll see in that next item some COVID pandemic relief pay. So you have a document there that kind of spells that out. Keep in mind, we have just about 1,300 staff members, so trying to make that a balance between full-time, part-time staff. There's pieces in there for our bus drivers, for our substitutes. And again, when we have that many staff, there is a cost associated with this, but that will come out of those ESSER funds. So the total for, as we anticipate right now, so as you can see, that would be for full-time regular staff would be $1,000. And then we'd prorate it for our hourly folks less than that, and bus drivers is flat $500. So there's a lot of details in there. I want to make sure I got that in front of you so you can ask questions. We're going to bring it back to you for approval in March at our March 7th meeting, so you have some time to look at that and ask some questions. We can make some adjustments in that. And again, as we've looked at these ESSER dollars, initially we were told you could not do that. And updated guidance has changed that, and we have some other districts who are using those dollars accordingly as well. And again, we've got people moving all over the place to just keep our buildings going and support our students and support each other. So certainly appreciate all the work that's gone into that. So again, total ESSER dollars is about $750,000 in that ESSER spending, which would come out of that account.
And this is a federal funding.
Correct. These are
Okay,
the federal fundings.
just to clarify that to also our audience too.
So Clint, I also see that, it says district directors, building administrators, department supervisors are not eligible for this payment. Is that a law, or is that?
There's not a law, and certainly as a board, if you wish to adjust that, we can. We just have not included our administrators. Not that they haven't been working hard and filling in, and we have people subbing in classrooms, our principals are, and have done a great job as well, but we did not include the administrators in that group.
I guess personally, I would like to see them included in that too. Probably on the same realm as a full-time teacher. Probably not anymore, but they've also had, had their share of more on their plate. And I guess I would like some of the district administrators or the board office administrators that have filled in, for the sub shortages too. I think that they should be, eligible for that also. That's my personal opinion, because, without their leadership, I think that, we'd be in dire straits.
I agree with that, because I think that probably alludes to why then right after that it says board office support staff are eligible to receive the payment. In other words, you're giving that as an option for us, or?
No, it just means people that work at the district office who are not directors or department supervisors, anybody who works at the district office but is not in one of those roles would be eligible for.
Right, because they just didn't have a number down for it, so that's why I was wondering
They'd
if there
fill
was
in
a
the
difference
same,
there.
whether it's 30 hours or if they're part-time, they'd be prorated based on that.
But I would agree with him on it. I believe that everybody has done their utmost, and I think that should also include the district directors and such too.
I'll be the third voice, but the other way, and I apologize ahead of time to everyone. I would like to see this for just the teachers. I think that there is something that we should do, of course, to thank people that are on different salary scales, directors, principals, building leadership. But I want this to feel exclusive to the teachers that are in there, because we really have asked them to go above and beyond their contract. And when I read this, that's kind of what I was thinking of. Everyone else has like the other duties line. But I would like it to stay focused on just the teachers, and maybe we come together as a board too, to find out how we can thank everyone else too. I'm not saying we do nothing, but I like this overload pay as it's written would be my input.
And you're not saying just teachers, just not
Correct.
building
As
administrators?
this is written, yes.
Just
Yep.
to clarify, thank you.
Do we know how much more that it would include if we do the district directors and such as well?
I don't have an exact number for you.
We have asked a lot of our administrators also, though, haven't we? On top of their regular duties.
It's been stressful for everybody, and I think I think we're all in agreement that we want to recognize the work that's been done. I think this is kind of a thank you. I'm glad it's coming from us and not from a state side of it, because I know that was part of the governor had said that they were going to give $1,000 for each teacher, kind of as a thank you or retention or staying with it. I see that as a different boat, but I don't want to get into that part of it. But I do think that everybody's been stressed by this. I do think that we need to recognize and appreciate the efforts of everybody, whether it's financially or whether it's with off time or anything that we can do. But I do think that I agree with Lindsay, and I agree with everybody that I think that everyone in our district needs to get some kind of appreciation from us as a board. We would like, at least I would like to be a board member that said thank you for what you've done the last 2 years, because it hasn't been easy on anybody. So whatever we can do, whether it's financial or whether it's something other than that, I'm open to that idea when you could bring it back.
Anybody else? I do agree, Mike, and everybody else, as a matter of fact, that spoke for this particular issue. I do agree that it is, I think after almost 2 years of working in unusual environment because of the pandemic, I think the board needs to say yes, thank you to everybody. I think everybody works very hard at our school district, regardless of their title and or position. So if it's possible, Clint, to look into also some of those options and keep that discussion with the board going, so we will look into that. And I do agree that we need to show our appreciation to everybody at our school district. Any other question?
How many people would we be talking about for the district director, building administration that are not eligible for this?
It's probably, again, just a guess, about 25.
And if we add more discussion, can we do that without changing the timeline too of the
Yeah, so
already identified?
we've got another meeting in 2 weeks, and so we can do some work on this and come back. Again, having it on that March 7th agenda allows it to be approved and then paid out in April. So we've got some time to work through some things. So we can certainly go back and have some discussion and bring something back to you and see how people feel about it.
Thank you, everybody. Next on our agenda, possible action. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. The items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, interfund transfer memo, special education contracts, memo of understanding Latino outreach coordinator, policies, no minimal required by law, and policies for the third reading. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll ask that we remove 502.7 in the policies for discussion. I didn't say that right. Move it from the consent agenda. The transportation discipline.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second to remove the 502.7
So
policy.
just to clarify, so you're saying approve the consent agenda
Without.
with the removal of?
Yes.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
For separate
And
discussion.
then
Yeah.
we'll
I told
follow
him
up
that
on
he needed to tell me when it was my turn, so I just jumped into action. I
Yeah.
don't know how to do this part.
Yeah,
First
okay.
timer.
Okay, so we have a motion, basically, or request to
Yes.
remove that. So the motion is to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 502.7, right? And do we have second? Oh, Karen,
seconded.
second that? Okay. All those of you in favor of the consent agenda, with the exception of 502.7 transportation discipline, please signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose, same side. Okay. Thank you. Motion carries. So we go back to the 502.7 transportation disciplines. And Lindsay, I will turn that back to you since you brought up this.
I'm going to scroll down to where it talks about the offenses. I believe it's on page 2. A little repetitive. Some of the things were categorized to me that I wouldn't know necessarily which class I was in. So maybe you can just talk me through it, and I'm the only one. But where it states above the listing, pushing or shoving another student, chasing or running beside a moving bus, failure to follow safe riding procedure is a Class 2 offense. Yet it's also listed in Class 1 offenses for pushing or shoving another student or near a moving bus. Running out in front of a moving bus just appears a little repetitive, and that's a different level of offense. And then in Class 2, chasing or running beside a moving bus.
So I'm going to take a stab at this. I think although the language is very similar, I think as it moves up in severity, it's pushing somebody in towards a moving bus, or the closer you get to the bus, the higher the offense is. Because of the level of danger, obviously, getting closer to that.
I guess I still see it the exact same. So pushing or shoving another student beside a moving bus, maybe, right, is what it says? And then it says, again, near a moving bus. But one is Class 1 and one is, I'm just thinking if we're expecting it to be clear what the expectations are and where that offense lies, I have an argument.
So Lindsay, the two bullets that you're talking about are the pushing and shoving out of Class 1 and the chasing or running beside, and the third bullet from the bottom, those are the two. Is there another Class 2 that I'm missing?
Well, above the listings, there's a small sentence that says it's classified as it's a Class 2 offense.
Right.
So that statement either removed, it seems a little bit repetitive and contradicting to
So-
have it there.
From my from my minimal knowledge of this, the difference would be that the Class 1, the person that's doing the pushing, if you're running beside a bus, I'll back down to Class 2 because it might be easier to explain backwards. If you're running beside the bus, you are choosing to do that as an individual. You're putting yourself at risk, which the school doesn't want you to do. But if I push somebody else, if I push Denny's the one that could get hurt, yet I'm the one that still initiated the offense. So I think that, at least in my past history, that was kind of my interpretation of why I looked at those two. I'm like, okay, you did it and it affected somebody else, whereas you did it and it affected yourself. It's dangerous. We don't want you to do that. That's Class 2. But when you could hurt somebody else, that happens near a bus, you push them out in front, that could be drastic. And the person that can get hurt was not in control. That was just, I don't know if that's the exact interpretation.
I
but
could definitely read it that way too.
That's the way I interpreted it when I
My
was
concern
working
is
it.
who's enforcing this policy. And if it's open to interpretation at this table, like even for me, and I could definitely read it your way and make it make sense. But if we're asking someone to enforce this policy and then on the supporting documentation, put a consequence into place. I feel like we're giving ourselves a little too much wiggle room and making it a little hazy for the person that then has to enforce it.
Ryan, do you have any feedback on this and from the transportation standpoint? And the other, I guess the other piece is, and so when I read the class 1, it's at or near, pushing somebody at or near a moving bus. Class 2 is pushing somebody in the bus danger zone. How do we quantify the danger zone?
So anything within 15 feet of the bus would be considered a bus danger zone?
Ryan, for the sake of our audience, can you please move forward towards the mic, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so as we look at like a bus danger zone, we consider that anytime within 15 feet of the bus. That class 3 offense where that is like pushing someone in the path of the school bus. Does that make sense? I mean, and we could definitely, we can clarify this more, but that's, as the transportation department, that's our interpretation of those policies. So, in the end, it's me.
I know.
So,
Sorry
Lindsay,
about
for clarity purposes, like that, if that danger zone specifies within 15 feet as class 2 and class 1 is maybe within 5 feet, I mean, are you thinking like if we define that, then it's easier
Well,
to?
It is defined above, but it says 10 feet.
Okay.
So, but I just think that if we're writing a policy, especially about discipline, where we're expecting somebody to enforce it and we have clear consequences that are lined out, if we have to ask questions, we need to rephrase it, would be my suggestion. And maybe I just can't read or comprehend, but I'm pretty sure that is there any other, am I the only one reading it that way or confused?
So if you had suggested changes, what would you suggest?
I think that we would remove that sentence of pushing or shoving another student above the class offenses so that they don't appear to be contradicting the others below it.
So that sentence that starts pushing or shoving another student just above where the class 1 offenses start, you're saying strike that language?
I would strike that out, and then you could add some clarification under the class 2 offenses to further state, because there isn't anything about the shoving or pushing as I'm looking at it now, but that could go under the class 2 offenses and reference that inside of the danger zone.
Gotcha.
And just for clarification, the way I would read it, but that's a great point that you are bringing, Lindsay, here. The way I will see the difference between the two is that under class 1, it does say a moving bus. So I think that's the difference between what we see in class 1 versus class 2. Danger zone doesn't mean the bus will be moving. It's still, the bus can be in park, but if somebody's doing that and out of the sudden the bus moved, that becomes why we call it danger. So I see the difference between the two. One is moving and one is, but it's a good point. I mean, it needs maybe perhaps to be clarified more, but I see the difference is one moving, one danger zone. So
No, I think that Lindsay's point is that, and Lindsay, I don't want to speak for you. You can tell me I'm wrong because it won't be the first time I heard it, probably not even today. But what the question would be, we have all of these bullets there. Why is one bullet clarified up above and the rest of them aren't? So she's right that that's redundant, that above all, before they even started getting into class 1, 2, or 3, up above we have one, it's not, I can't say it's a paragraph because paragraph needs to be more than one sentence, but it's bulleted out, or it's out, separated out, that pushing and shoving another student or chasing beside a bus is failure. Why is that re-explained when down below it's listed as an offense? So it seems redundant. Maybe that just needs to be taken out because it's still addressed down below, and it still allows the director to look at it and see the severity of it and decide where it falls as, is a 1, 2, or 3. Let them evaluate that case on a case-by-case basis. And
Yes, that would summarize it. And I think for the chasing or running beside a moving bus, I mean, if that is clearly listed down there in the same words too. So it's really just moving the others down.
So we can do one of two things. We can strike that language and approve that policy with that piece out of there, or we can go back and work on kind of refining that, taking that piece out and maybe taking some of that language and pushing it down into class 2 offenses and making sure that we're not missing anything there. But if it's already built into class 2, we leave it there. Otherwise, we may clarify it from some of the language that was up above.
So we would just be taking on this one at the next meeting, then you'll have the information with that, and then we would take and
So
put
we
that
would
as
bring
part
it
of that.
back. We can even have it for you to look at in 2 weeks and then bring it back on the 7th for approval.
Thank you, I like that.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to approve the policy as, with that stricken out for tonight. I think that it's stated, it's already stated as class 2 offenses down in there, and if it's not, then add the bullet at a different time. I don't see where I think it's just redundant. You're right.
So, Mike, just to be clear here, so what you are saying...
I'll read it. I'll reread it. I'll state it properly.
No, what I'm
yeah.
saying, what you are saying and what Clint are saying. Clint is saying, let's
Two
take
different things.
it, take that policy, work on it, refine it, and bring it back. For
He said we could do two different things.
Either way.
We could either do it right now,
Yeah.
or we could come back with it after they've spent time to look at it and strike that and come back and tell us, well, we struck this.
Mhm.
So I'm saying, why don't we just make a decision? And my motion would be to eliminate the sentence, pushing or shoving another student, chasing or running beside a moving bus, or failure to follow safe riding procedures is a class 2 offense with the consequence suspension or loss of transportation privileges. That just needs to be struck. That's my motion.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay. Those of you who are in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so motion carried. So thank you. Okay, thank you, Ryan. Moving forward, next item is accept and place on file the FY21 financial audit. What are the wishes of the board?
I would make a motion to accept and place the audit on file.
Second.
Okay, so any discussion?
One of the deficiencies, or what that wasn't a deficiency, what was mentioned at the bottom of that, I believe, was that we needed to look at a procedure for change orders.
Right.
Is that in process? I saw on this last one that we mentioned something, if there was a change order over $25,000, that we would be,
Right.
it would be brought back to the board. Is that going to be?
That would be, the procedure going forward would be
Okay.
when the board approves a contract, that we stipulate the minimum amount of change order dollar amount.
has to be
that
brought
would have
back to us
come
if
back
it-
to the board to approve, or if it's less than that, then administration can approve it.
All right.
But make you aware of those
Right.
changes. Yeah.
All right.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those of you who are in favor of accepting and placing on file the FY21 financial audit, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Same line. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Denny.
Yeah, did you?
That's okay. Next item is to approve the purchase from Apple Inc. Education for Mhs Digital Art Lab, upgrade in the amount of $47,025. So what are the wishes of the board? And we want to mention that the funding will come from the federal, basically grant, which is ESSER grant. Yeah. Scott, do you have any information to share with us?
Yes.
But after the, first of all, the wishes. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make the motion to approve the MHS Digital Art Lab.
I'll second.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, so
Can
just
you
so,
please
just so
share
you have
with
some
us?
information about that lab, it has 25 desktop computers in there, currently Apple iMacs that were purchased in 2016. Prior to that, they were replaced in 2009. So we have a pretty well-established 6 to 7 year cycle of replacement. This is the lab that all of our students use at the high school that are pursuing potentially careers in digital art or photography or print design. I think that they said that they're also teaching some animation classes in there now, and they hope to do some video editing in the future. So it's a pretty well-used lab, and it's just one that over time those machines get slow and we need to get them replaced so that they're able to run the Adobe suite of software like that we would expect students to learn on.
Scott, is that replacement rapid enough? I know that that's a...
I know we try to get our, I mean, that's one reason why we go with Apple computers is we tend to get a better length of time from them so that we feel like we get the money's worth. I always, you know, bow to the input of the art teacher who's in that lab. I mean, I think if they had their way, they'd probably like it every 3 years. But who wouldn't? I mean, we all like to have faster machines. But we try to balance that, and especially when we have funding able that comes up like this,
Right.
that's able to relieve the high school budget from having to cover it.
Have we looked into a possibility of rotating, I wouldn't say a third of them, but maybe we do half of them in 3 years, and every 3 years we replace, so 6 years for a full rollover, but 3 years, half, I don't know, something along those lines, so it's not one big lump sum all the time, but it's a smaller amount every 3 years as opposed to one big one every 6?
That's a great question, and honestly, the financial benefits of that would be the obvious point that you're making, I think, but the potential downside is that if you have 24 kids in the classroom, you're going to have, you know, 6 or whatever the amount would be. You're going to have a certain amount of kids on one generation of computer or 6, you know, so those students that get the brand new computers are going to be like really appreciating like the time that the kids that are on the oldest computers would have. Now, if we did it every, you know, faster, maybe that would be less of a, you know, less noticeable, but it would still be a potential issue.
Sometimes, Mike, they're also, depending on the software that particular computer is able to
Right.
run, you might not be able to do certain programs on one platform that you couldn't do on the other one.
So are they better off for 3 years being able, half the class to be able to use it, or do they have to wait another 3 years to not be able to use it?
Well, and that's the
So I
thing.
mean,
I think
that's
keeping
really,
them on the same platform and the same level is,
I understand that you'd have 2 different levels and 2 different groups to be able to do it, but the option is if we don't do that, and I'm not arguing for this, I think that that's something to have, I will still bow to you're an expert and the art teacher is an expert, and if there's a way to speed up that process to make sure that our kids are getting the best opportunities to be successful, the most current opportunities, then I'm all for that. That's all but I'm saying, logically, if we go every 6 years, bringing something in at 3 years, half of them are going to get to use it and rotate for 3 more years. We're going to get better equipment, you know, and be on 2 platforms. But it's better to have half than 0 in my mind.
May I ask then
Not
too,
for
just
6
out of,
years, we're not having.
just out of curiosity, what happens to those computers that are taken out of usage?
So because we do wait 6 years or 7 years to replace them, we still sell them at the highest amount we can get for them. We don't usually sell them one at a piece. We try to sell them as a lab. This is another reason why we typically go with Apple devices, because the resale value, even after 6 years, is really decent. So it allows us to recoup a little bit of that investment. if there's, I mean, you know, and if we have older machines in the building, like that is, you know, somebody else is using, we would also like use that as a way of potentially relieving like a really old machine that's older than 6 years. We just try not to let that happen.
Right, right.
Is there a program to lease these instead of?
They always offer lease. Typically, I bow to our financial department and other people regarding leases. We have done that in the past, one time. So, but usually it's been with a much larger purchase.
And is it more beneficial to us to own those?
At
In
the
your
end, it is, yeah, because like I said, we still get that residual value from them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other question for Scott? Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. So all those in favor of approving the purchase from Apple Inc. Education for Mhs Digital Art Lab upgrade in the amount of $47,025, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, same sign. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Well, we move into next item, which is the approval of the 2022-2023 calendar. What are the wishes of the board?
Motion to approve the 2022-23 academic calendar.
Second.
Can I ask a question?
Second.
Yes,
After the
again,
second.
after second, yeah,
Okay.
I second it.
okay.
Now you can answer.
Did you get that? Who's second? Ken, please.
So on the calendar, in regards to Good Friday, I agree wholeheartedly with what she said. What's the difference between that day off on Good Friday as opposed to Monday? Is there a significant change in?
And certainly as a board, you can do that, right? It's a certain number of days, so if as a board, you would prefer to have that on Good Friday instead of Easter Monday, the motion is for approval, you'd have to vote that down, and then a new motion to approve the calendar with the adjustment for Good Friday. But from a number of days, whether it's Friday or Monday, doesn't make a difference.
But
If you want to do both, then we have to start moving days around. It gets a little trickier.
Is there a particular reason why it was Monday as opposed to Friday? I mean,
That's just a conversation that the committee with staff had about that day.
the majority of the committee and staff thought it would be better for Good Monday instead of Good Friday.
During those conversations, yes. Again, if you went out and asked teachers now and staff now, they probably say, well, we'd like both days. And,
Sure.
right, so again,
This doesn't solve all of the problems, but we also have an early dismissal and an in-service day later in the month. I know they typically fall later in the month, but could those come into that prior week to give families the Good Friday off? I know teachers are families too, so that's not a solution, but it's partially, and we're beyond that conversation a little bit, so it comes late as well, but I would agree with the other comments.
I would hold on changing the half-day PD day because
Sure.
we do want staff there. Again, moving that from Easter Monday to Good Friday is certainly, from a board standpoint, we can make that adjustment.
We can make that adjustment at a future time?
No, we'd make it now.
Tonight.
Right now, okay.
If we want to approve a calendar tonight. If not, then we'll have to come back at a later date to do
It
that.
is hard to make that decision without additional feedback from staff, but I don't want to delay it either. Would Jamie have a comment or about conversations that happened with that? Is that putting you on the spot? Sorry.
I
Jamie,
think she's
I'm
asking
sorry.
Jamie.
Right, okay,
In talking with the staff
Just-
and the committee,
right.
when they decided they wanted it on that Monday, was part of that conversation that a lot of people travel, and they wanted that extra travel day.
Yes.
Thanks for walking up. Would there be anything to add if we were to make any kind of recommendation that even that in-service day, I know just maybe kind of gone against that a little bit, but
the in-service days, we worked really hard to make sure that we could get the most maximized time out of that with staff participation, knowing that when we pair them with longer weekends, that staff attendance typically falls off. In terms of the Easter holiday, that was the general consensus from our teachers group, that they would prefer to have the Monday off. It was for the travel reason that most people were coming home and would rather have that day as opposed to the Friday. We're flexible.
So, but if somebody needed an extra day for travel, they could use vacation time for that Monday, if so needed, as opposed to making Good Monday.
They'd have to take a personal day. They don't really have vacations day.
Okay, so.
And they really aren't supposed to, take their personal days or vacation days. They're not supposed to butt them against another
Break.
break.
Is that the same for a PD day if they were to take time off for that day? So you said attendance would be low, but in-service days aren't optional.
In-service days are
right?
work days, so
Right.
we try to encourage them to be there for those days, especially in the instances like a TQ day where we have speakers coming in, or in-service that the district is planning or the building is planning, and they've put, they may have speakers or planned programming coming on. We want people there. Again, it's another work day, so if there's a legitimate reason to be gone, that happens.
So if we were to move that in-service day to right before, to Good Friday, would that be? I mean, at this point, teachers are there anyway, right?
I think
I
if
know
we're gonna,
that's not a,
if we're gonna, I wouldn't necessarily move the,
Right.
I would move that day from, that would be my suggestion. Again, from a staff standpoint, are you gonna get a lot of pushback because we moved from Easter Monday to Good Friday? Probably not. They're used to having Good Friday anyway. So, again, that's up to the board to make that decision.
But the majority of your group, talking to the district and the teachers when building this calendar, wanted the Monday off, right? You want to be with your family on Sunday, have that day to drive back on Monday.
That was the consensus from when we asked for feedback. Because again, when we were building it, we're pretty indifferent about what works better for families and for our staff, so we could go either way.
I also noticed on all the in-service days that are on Fridays, we have a 2-hour early dismissal before that. Is that, obviously it's intentional, but is that to coordinate what's going on in the in-service and maybe get a jump start on that?
I think it's to do that and to make it easier for families when you have kind of those, because the more disruptions and half days here and then full days here, to try to combine them together so it's a little more useful time for families, but also then they can do some in-service work and then go back and do some additional follow-up on that.
Okay, any more discussion? So I assume the key is that the staff almost requesting that or
Yeah.
liking to have Monday rather than
That was
Friday.
what came out of our meeting
Okay.
with the teachers group.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? Any other question?
I would just be disappointed that we don't acknowledge the day our Lord died. Good Friday.
So, we do have a motion, or we did not? With that discussion,
We do have a motion
Motion on
to
the
Yeah, we
accept.
did
is to
have a
approve the
motion.
calendar.
And we have a second, right?
If the
Okay.
board wishes to change that, we
Yeah.
just need to
Yeah,
that motion first.
so,
So how do I amend that to say,
We have to vote on
We
this
have
first
to,
or not, and if
yeah.
it fails, then you can amend it.
Okay, so since we have a motion and a second, I would like to call for a vote on that. So all those,
John, you know what? I want to go back to the discussion side of it because I'm going to vote, and I think it'll be obvious after I talk. I don't want anybody to be thinking why I'm voting the way I'm going to vote. Anybody that's followed me, anybody that knows me, knows that I was a Catholic school principal. They know that my moniker for Twitter is Catholic Hawk 81. I have been involved as a Christian for a long time. I mean, I was born and raised a Catholic. However, I do believe that our public schools were founded not based off of the Christian identity. In fact, our founders specifically stated there needed to be a separation of the two. I believe that we need to follow the recommendation of our teachers. That's what they wanted to do. I attend Mass on Good Fridays, and what I will tell you is that it's not a holy day of obligation in the Catholic Church, and that it's not highly attended. Now, that's their choice. I make my choices. I will still be there on Good Friday. I still will honor that. But I think that it's important to make sure that we, one, honor our teachers. We just said that we wanted to give their voices something, and we wanted to give them a thank you, and then to turn around and say, no, well, we want you to do what we want you to do. I see that. I have a conflict myself with that, but that's my feeling on it. So I didn't want anybody just to hear me say my vote and then not be able to explain why I was voting the way I felt I was going to vote. So
thank you, Mike.
To echo just a little bit, I'll tell you, this might be one of the hardest votes for that reason, because I do think just everything that you said, I do want to echo just a little bit. We have to honor our teachers here, and you taking it back to the separation is a fair statement. So.
Thank you, Lindsay.
That was not the intention of the founding fathers, but go ahead.
I can show it to you.
Okay, so let's move forward and say,
We trust.
Ken?
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry? Yeah, okay. All those in favor of approving the 2022-2023 calendar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries. Okay, we move into next item, the award contract to Sheets General Construction for the MHS Student Center renovation in the amount of $2,743,500 and change orders greater than or equal to $25,000 are approved by the school board. What are the wishes of the board?
I'm going to just jump in here. I know
please.
we're going to get to a motion here quickly. And you can see where I'm going to ask you to approve this first contract for the MHS Student Center as it's written, and then we're going to come back and talk about the other two, which I'm going to ask you to reject due to some significant changes in costs, which we know are out in the market. So with that, I would go ahead and entertain the motion, and then we'll move into discussion.
Mhm. So do we have a motion to approve item M?
I'll move to approve item M.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Lindsay and Ken. Okay, let's have some discussion, please.
So again, just as we look at, there are three bid packages here, and we'll go through each one. The first one, so as you recall, there's really two different projects. There's the HVAC project that's based on our long-term facility maintenance plan, based on the HVAC priorities that were in there. And because it deals with ventilation and air quality, we can leverage the ESSER dollars to pay for that, which is a great opportunity, I think, for us to use those dollars. So there was that piece. Then there was also the student center separately. As we started looking at putting bid packages together, because all of that work would take place at the high school, they took the HVAC work out of that particular proposal and combined it with the student center. So what you're approving for the student center is the student center, but also it's the HVAC work, okay? It's both of those combined. Now, they are higher than what we initially budgeted and what you initially approved. And as you know, given the market right now, we're seeing significant cost increases in building materials and timelines, all of that. And we're talking 30 to 35% increases in the market right now. That's probably going to continue for the near future. So I don't anticipate that necessarily getting any better, but it is. And so you also have the issue of the manufacturers who are building these products know that everyone's buying these products, and supply and demand, price goes up. Then you have the people who are bidding on these projects. There's a lot of work out there because there are a lot of federal dollars out there and grant opportunities right now for construction projects. Again, these contractors are also dealing with staff shortages, where they're trying to recruit and pay their staff. So we're seeing all of that, I think, reflected in these prices. So for this particular package, we know the high school, as the largest building, this is a high priority to make sure we get this done. So whether we, if we were still looking at all the HVAC projects individually, it would be one of our highest priorities. So based on that, that's why I recommend doing that. The other two HVAC proposals, we need to go back and reprioritize. Given the budget that we have, right now we've got Susan Clark is a significant increase from what was originally budgeted, but it's a high priority. The district office is in there. It has a significant budget attached to it. But I'm not sure that that would be a priority over what needs to be done at Susan Clark. So that's why I want, my recommendation will be to reject the HVAC 2 and HVAC 1 bids that are in item N and O when we get to them, so that we can go back, spend time really digging into what needs to be done, what's the most critical, and then fine-tuning that bid based on what we know the market's doing right now. The downside to that is that's going to be all those other HVAC projects are going to take another year to complete just because of the lead time. But again, I think we have to do that now. We will still have the ESSER dollars over that period of time, so we can still use that. We don't lose out on that opportunity. It'll just take an extra year to get that kind of up and going. So with that, I'd entertain questions.
So do we have enough ESSER dollars to cover those?
We do. We have enough to cover the high school project
Right.
as it is, yes. And
They-
Not all three projects.
no,
So do we get more ESSER dollars next year?
no.
Then how would we fund that one we're going to reject next year?
So we're going to have to go back, and there's going to be pieces of it that we're not going to do. That's
Okay.
what I'm saying, like, the
Okay.
district office may come off of that list, right?
Okay.
We're still going to have to do it. That's going to come out of our save dollars.
Okay.
And other maintenance dollars that we have. It's just going to have to be further down the road.
Just to clarify, you're gonna look at what's more important and prioritize what's important to spend the dollars that you have on, and pair the things out that maybe are wishes as opposed to needs.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other question? And Ryan is with us here also, if anybody have a question for Ryan or Clint also, please.
Just on a couple of these bids, I mean, we had several on this first one that you want to approve and only a couple on the others. What's the reason for that?
So HVAC contractors are very stretched right now. So the fact that I'm actually was ecstatic that we had two bids, honestly. These were really large projects and involved a lot of subcontractors. So when we got the bid from Northwest Mechanical and Climate Engineers for the two HVAC projects, that's about what I expected. I expected more bids for the student center because it's more of a general contracting type of project versus, and still obviously some significant HVAC in there, but again, those same subcontractors that bid on that student center were bidding on, or part of that subcontractor list for the HVAC projects as well.
Now, on the recommendation of the sheets, is there information back on them, like Better Business Bureau, or how do you?
Yeah,
how do
yeah.
you
So,
profile all these
so
contractors?
yeah. So no, Sheets is a new contractor to us, but in talking with their references and talking with our architects, they are highly recommended. So they're out of the Makokata area, so not very far away, and have done really a lot of good work in that area.
They've worked with other schools as well?
Yes, correct. Yeah, they're a commercial construction company.
And this is still priority number one over the other two projects?
Yes. Well, I mean, the HVAC work has to get done, and we know the HVAC work that's in the high school bid would be one that we would prioritize anyway. So I would recommend approving that, moving forward with that, and then going back and
Just taking out the construction of the student center and just doing HVAC, then you could get a lot more HVAC work across all the,
so the student center is coming out of a different funding stream.
okay.
So,
okay.
remember, those were two projects we combined just to make that bid proposal kind of easier for them to identify and work through, because all of that work was happening at the high school.
The issue, if you split it and you're dealing with two general contractors on one site, is really tough. So the fact that we have one general at the high school is gonna be really helpful for us.
So the student center is not impacting the rest of the HVAC work. And
It's not pulling from ESSER dollars.
correct.
Correct.
Gotcha. You were still within considerable what you,
Yeah, I mean, they're both a little bit higher than what we had expected going in, but with the cost of sheet metal and the cost of all this stuff going, I mean, we've seen a significant increase over the 12 months that these, have been out and in works.
But the difference still for the high school projects is still, even though we are talking about the change, is still the change is minimum versus, for example, when you compare that to HVAC 2. With
HVAC
Susan-
bid
Susan
package
Clark
one
and-
was a shock to my
Yeah.
heart. I'll be honest.
lot of money. A
So,
lot,
yeah.
big difference, yes. Hmm.
That one was not pleasant.
Yeah.
What was the response from, is it Leggett? Am I saying that
Leggett.
right? Leggett. What was their response for the difference?
So again,
Just
supply
that was
chain,
it.
supply increases. As we look at our HVAC system, we've been a trained system forever. And when you single source HVAC equipment, there's that lack of competition between vendors can get you in the end. We've had great luck with it. It integrates with all our systems, makes it easier on our employees, but we're paying for it right now, unfortunately.
I think there's a lot more conversations to have with the architects in terms of how we reframe and come back to the table and reprioritize that. It's just going to take time to do that. And so, again, I don't see us having a new bid package ready to come back to you in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So given that, we need to move on with the one, in my recommendation. That first project, we're going to kind of sharpen our pencils and go back to work. And that includes taking that conversation through our facility committee so that we have that group talking about what are our priorities, because we are talking already, that group is talking about long-term facility maintenance and, what do we want that to look like and lay that plan out. So when we come back with that, it'll have gone through that facility committee to talk about what those priorities would be.
Can we, Clint, if I may ask, can we have some sort of an update later on in the future as this committee meets and updates and have this discussion? if we can have some sort of a discussion here or bring the updates and share it with us, that would be really appreciated.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other question? Okay, we go back to the motion that we have here, and we have second. So all those in favor of giving that contract to Sheets General Construction for the MHS Student Center renovation in the amount of $2,743,500. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, thank you. Motion carried. So we move to next item, item N on our agenda, which is the award contract to Northwest Mechanical, Inc. for HVAC 2 improvements in the amount of $1,926,000, and change orders greater than or equal to $25,000 are approved by, obviously, the school board. So that's why we are seeing this back to us. So what are the wishes of the board? Based on the recommendations that we just heard also from Ryan and from Clint.
I'll move to reject
I would second.
all of the bids, sorry.
Okay. And we have second? Thank you. Any discussion, or we're okay with the discussion that we already had about that?
Do you have a rough idea of when you might bring this back
I don't.
tonight? Okay.
I think over the next couple of weeks, I'm meeting with Leggett, with Representative. We talked today, but I'll be doing some follow-up on Wednesday. So there'll be several conversations here over these next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of rejecting the contract to Northwest Mechanical, Inc. for HVAC 2 improvements in the amount of $1,926,000, please signify by saying aye.
Just a second, John, you said rejecting.
Yeah, you said reject.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Reject all,
All
we're
right.
rejecting all of the bids.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Right, that's
All
what
right.
you're
Aye.
That's the motion.
Because that wasn't what the.
That was what the
pardon me,
motion was, yeah.
I got confused too, because it wasn't what the,
We are rejecting,
Original-
not approving.
you get,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
lost there then, sorry.
It's
Sorry,
okay,
Dave.
so we'll
Yeah,
we'll
that
we'll
was
we'll
confusing.
go with this again.
Lindsay can repeat the motion and we can,
Sure, I move to
'Cause we
reject
need-
all bids.
The motion that was made originally was just that about accept the bid, wasn't it, or did it
No,
say
it was
reject?
to reject all bids.
And that was seconded.
Correct.
Sorry, I apologize, because I thought it did not have the rejection in your
That's what I
original
thought, too.
information.
It's okay.
Correct, yeah.
Thanks for the clarification. That is fine. Okay, all those in favor of rejecting the contract or to award the contract to Northwest Mechanical, Inc. for HVAC 2 improvements in the amount of $1,926,000, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Same. Okay, thank you. Motion carried. So we move into next item, to reject all bids for the HVAC 1 improvements. What are the wishes of the board?
I'd make a motion to reject all bids for the HVAC 1 improvements.
Second.
Any discussion? Or question? Okay. All those in favor of rejecting all bids for the HVAC 1 improvements, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay. Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Thank you. With that, we move into, thank you, Ryan. With that, we move into discussion and information. And the first item we have is, Tom, December
Okay,
financials.
I will be glad to present. And in case you want one of those fine red books that the auditor was showing, I have 2 extra copies. So if you would like a hard copy versus the electronic, just thought I'd ask. So tonight, we're talking about December financials and same deposit balances and fund financial summary and our comparison of actual versus published budget is being presented. So tonight, we approved the audit report, thank you very much, and February 28th is our work session, which will be devoted to talking about the budget, as well as updates on some other financial information that night. And then March 14th, I will explain at the 28th meeting about budget guarantee, and the board will be presented with approving that on March 14th, the budget guarantee resolution, and then also setting the public hearing for Monday, April 11th. So the FY23 budget is due to the county auditors by the 15th, so we can have that public hearing and approving that on April 11th. So the first item in the board book is your the deposit balances reconciled for the month of December. And I will just point out different things. There isn't a lot to point out, but I'll work through these pages. But if you got questions, feel free to ask. On the fund financial summary, comparing our fund balances, December 31st of 21 to December of 2020. And I will just follow up with last month, the question about the PEPL fund balance being a lot smaller last year. And that was simply because our stadium renovation project was going on last year, and that came out of our physical plant and equipment levy. So that's why it's the fund balance was a lot smaller. And actually you can see in capital projects that those fund balances are increasing. Most of our budgeted costs, annual costs, come out of physical plant and equipment levy, and that save fund has been accumulating for future projects. So that's where that high school renovation project would come out of. Okay, and then we have our budgeted or our actual expenditures through December compared to last year. You can see we're, even though we're halfway through the calendar year or the fiscal year, we're not quite halfway through expenses, because our salary and benefits of teachers, usually February is that halfway mark. So, and that's because they start getting paid in September through August rather than on the fiscal year basis. So again, nothing major to point out on that. Then we have our two general fund reports. Revenues is the first one. Comparing our total local sources and state sources, you can see we're right on what our budget is. And then federal revenue kind of comes in after the fact, because we have to expend federal dollars before we get that revenue. So, we've, in January and February, we have received through quarter 2 of the fiscal year. So you'll see more federal revenue coming in the next half of the year. So, and then expenses, again, I would just have you compare where we're at in total compensation and total budget as to gauging it how we were last year, and it seems like we're on target, I guess. Those budgeted expenditures will go up because right now I adjust this for the ESSER dollars that we're spending as we're going. Some of it is budgeted, some of it, like the technology that we built in. I didn't have it on the line item budget, but I know we have that resource, so I would add that, in the future months. So that's it.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Any question for Tom? Tom, I have a quick question for the ESSER fund.
Okay.
That comes from the federal government. When is the last expected money that we get from the federal government?
ESSER 2, so we've received 3 different ESSER allocations.
Mm-hmm.
We're in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 right now, and ESSER 2 would be fiscal 23, and ESSER 4 ends in September of 24, which actually goes a few months into fiscal 25, but anyway, that's
good. Thank you for the information. Any other question for Tom? Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Moving forward, we move to next item under the discussion and information, which is the review administrative regulations, and under that we have two items, 502.7R, transportation discipline administrative regulations, 501.5R, elementary school transfer administrative regulations, and that will be in new regulations. Any question or discussion about that? Okay, moving forward, item C, first reading on policies, and we have 5 different policies here. 501.3, entrance requirement, 501.11, dual enrollment, 501.12, student transfer in, 504.3, intuitions and that's to delete that, initiations, I'm sorry, and to delete that. And item 5, 505.3, student injury illness at school. Any question about any of those policies?
On the initiations, we don't have to have anything in about hazing?
Because it's
anymore?
built into other policies.
Okay.
Our bullying and harassment policies.
Okay, yeah,
our
that's
discipline
right, that's
policies,
right,
so it's already in there.
And please, if you have any question, we still have 2 more readings here before we approve those policies. So please don't hesitate to connect with Clint and Daphne to also, either or can answer your questions. So please. Any other question? Okay, not last item, but almost we're getting to the last item. Announcement, meetings, and event. February 21, no school, President's Day. February 28, a school board work session, and remember it's 6 p.m., and that will be at the admin center. March 7th, a school board community conversation at 6 p.m., lower level, City Hall. And remember for March, the community conversation and our regular session will meet March 7 and not the following week due to the spring break. March 7 to 11, parent-teacher conferences. March 14 to 18, spring break. March 24th, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., the kindergarten round-up at the admin center. Any other items that any of you would like to share with us?
I'd just like to congratulate our 4 wrestlers who made it to the state tournament, qualified, and good luck to them.
Thank you. Anybody else?
And
think I'd like to say-
congratulations to Denny for being inducted into the Hall of Fame, Muscatine Hall of Fame.
Congratulations. Yes, definitely. Any other thing? Okay, can we have the motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second? Okay. All those in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay. Thank you, and happy